Alright, let's go over how to land a Piper Warrior. So, we're in the downwind here for runway 1 at Farmingdale. And in the downwind, I look for around 90 knots, around 2300 RPM, and pattern altitude. In the downwind, I'll do like a little pre-landing flow, CMFT, where I'm going to go carb heat, mixture, fuel pump on, and the tank. And we'll switch to tank. Just a little pre-landing checklist. So I'm going to wait until I'm abeam my runway numbers here, meaning I'm right next to them. Okay, so I'm flying along, looking at my runway, looking ahead, make sure I don't drift. And this is all assuming that I'm cleared to land on runway 1 already. So once that runway 1, that number, passes below my wing, which is right about here, I could start getting in my landing mode. Right, abeam means that I'm directly next to it. There's runway 1, there's the start of it, and I'm directly next to it, as opposed to being like, over here, way back in the downwind. So once I'm being on numbers, I'm going to reduce my throttle to around 1800 RPM, maybe a little less, and I'm going to go ahead and apply flaps 10. And I'm going to start a descent at around 500 feet per minute, so I can gradually head down to the runway. As I'm doing this, look back to your runway, so you can gauge when to turn base. If you're flying a normal pattern, if you're like not too wide or whatever, you're going to turn base at a 45-degree angle away from the runway, right about here. But the wider you get, that rule is not going to apply. My power's a little too low. I'll bump it up a touch. So I'm in this base now, this left base for runway 1. It's descending left-hand turn. When I'm on downwind, I go 90 knots. When I go descend on my downwind, I go 80. And then on my base, I look for 75. Then final, I'm looking for around 70. So right here on base, I'll level the wings off. I applied flaps 2. Get some more drag as well as some more lift. Looking at my runway here, speed's around 75. I'm going to go ahead and turn final here. Now, this pattern and any landing is all about having a good approach and having good airspeed control and not being too jumpy on the throttle. Like they say, you can have a good landing with a bad approach. If you have a good approach, doesn't mean you're going to have a good landing, but it sets you up for one. So, reduce power maybe a little bit here, not being too crazy. And once the runway is made, I'm going to go flaps full. So, right here, this is the sight picture. I'll go flaps full here. This is the sight picture you want to see on final. Right, speed's around 70, around 500 feet per minute. Power is a little lower here. There's the runway. Right, we have 3 white and a red, so a tad high. Right, no big deal. When I'm here, my focus is on the start of the runway. This is where my eyes are looking. Obviously, in the sim, you can see the whole world, right? But my eyes are going to be looking right here. Okay. This is just what the plane looks like for your reference. You're coming in to land in the field. I'll unpause it here. Maybe add a little power. Speed 70, that's good. And I'm just going to bring the airplane right down to those numbers. I'm going to aim the trajectory of the plane to hit the numbers, or to, head towards those numbers. So everything here is looking fine. Nice stable approach on the center line. Alright, now once those numbers go away, right about here, the plane is in a position where it's pretty flat. Okay, if it were to hit the ground in this current position, you're going to hit the nose wheel first, or maybe the propeller. Right? It's not good. Airplanes do not like to land flat. Right? Now, when we fly, we're either like this, maybe we're a bit more nose down, depending on the approach you're making. But generally, you're going to be either this flat or nose down a bit more. So we have to get the airplane into what's called a flare, where you're going to pull the nose back, where the back 2 wheels hit first, then the nose wheel. So I'm going to show you how to do that. So for now, once you're over the numbers, you want to get in that transition mode to the flare, where you reduce power slowly to idle. If it's windy, maybe go a little bit above idle. And you want to look to the end of the runway over here. You want to look to the trees over here, those buildings, right? If you look at the runway center line, you're not going to have a good field of view, like a good range or a gauge of what the runway looks like. However, if you look to the end of the runway, you'll have a better idea. Alright, so what we're going to do is we're going to unpause it, and I'm going to go power idle slowly. You never want to decrease power really fast in these planes because, you know, everything's going to change, right? Remember, the propeller hits the rudder, so the controls rudder effectiveness nice and slow. And then I'm going to look to the end of the runway, and I'm going to pull the yoke back nice and slow once I get right over the runway. So I'm going to unfreeze it here. Slowly go to idle and get to about here. This is where you want to bring the plane down to. It's literally maybe a foot over the runway, if that, probably less. You want to bring the plane down from where it was over the numbers, you know, like 50 feet or whatever, down to here, where it feels like you're basically like in the runway. And right when you bring it there, you're slowly pulling it back almost to the end of the runway, like a power off stall, to get those back two wheels to hit first. So as you slow down, you pull it back more. I'm going to pause it again. I'm pulling it back more. And look at that. Those back two wheels are going to hit that runway first. Now, once I hit the ground, don't let go of the yoke. Keep in your aileron and your stabulator inputs so the plane doesn't like slam down or start skidding, right? So we'll unfreeze it, hold it off, let go of it. So that's what happens if you let go. So when I unfreezed it, it didn't take my input and it let go of the yoke and the plane kind of hit the ground flat. But that's basically how it works. So I'm going to go flaps up. I'll go full power. I'm going to show you one more of those kind of at normal speed now without pausing it. There goes the car repeat. Boom. So I'll show you another one here. I'll loop it around left traffic. And just for time purposes, I'm going to go ahead and do a very illegal pattern here. And just get us up to pattern altitude quickly. I shouldn't say illegal, but non-standard. Just to save you some time in watching this video. I wish this plane could climb quicker. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to show you one more in normal speed. I'm not going to pause it at all. And then I'm going to show you what it looks like to land in a crosswind. Because my instructor used to teach me, hardest thing to do in aviation is to land a plane. Second hard, and then the next hardest thing to do is land in a crosswind. So, crosswinds are pretty tricky. Alright. Car repeat. Mixture. Fuel pump. Tanks are still fine. Alright. Beamer numbers. Reduce that power. Ups 10. Oops. Start descending. Looking for 80, maintaining control here, not drifting left. Alright, turn base. Okay, on base, flaps 2. Check, make sure no one's on final. Let's go full. So just pay attention, listen to the throttle sounds, and just see how I do it. Hopefully I don't screw it up. Alright, so notice how on that landing, I kind of almost thought of it as like two separate flares, or two separate motions, rather, with the yoke. The first one was to get it down over the runway, like we spoke about earlier, and then the second one was me pulling it back to hold the plane off the runway and prevent it from hitting the ground flat. Because remember from your stall lesson that as a plane loses energy, as it loses that forward momentum, that speed, you have to pull the yoke back a little bit more to keep it at the current altitude. Because if you don't, naturally when any object loses energy in the air, it's going to start going down because gravity, right? So we'll go ahead and turn. I'm going to show you one more, and while I'm flying this thing, I'm going to go ahead and put in some wind, maybe a wind layer. We'll go wind from, we'll make it a crosswind, 270 at, I don't know, 13 knots sounds good. Yeah, that looks fine. So we'll do one more pattern here, and then we'll call it a day. Alright, so in the downwind here, notice how, this is a pretty strong wind, right? Our plane over here is crabbed to the right, and we're still going straight. Now, this wind seems like it's a little too strong to be flying a Warrior. Let's change that speed a little bit. Ah, that's why. 270. There we go. Seems like the winds in the same game are much stronger than they are in real life. Alright, so let me just explain the crab real quick. We are pointed, like our plane is traveling this way, parallel to our runway, but our nose is pointed slightly to the right, and I'll kind of show you that, if this makes sense, like over the ground. Notice how we're angled to the right, but we're still going kind of like left this way. So, I'll go ahead and just configure the plane, carb heat, mixture rich, flaps 10. Alright. Make our way down to the airport, and we're gonna go over how to land in a crosswind. This is obviously, like I said earlier, it's one of the harder parts to do in these small planes, or any plane for that matter. Flaps 2. Gonna overshoot this final a little bit. That's because the wind is coming from our left side. Alright, great. So, on final here, let me get stabilized. And, so, notice how on final, our plane is heading towards, I'm gonna increase the wind a little bit here now. Our plane's heading towards the runway, but its nose is pointed a little bit to the left. Maybe let's try that. This is called crabbing, right? Notice how our airplane's heading, right? The way that the nose is facing is heading kind of over towards the shopping center over there, but our airplane's track, where it's actually going, is towards the runway. So this is the method that I use. It's called the crab method, where you come in crab. You come in sideways, and then when we get over the runway, we're going to fix this, obviously, because a plane can't land crooked. So basically just treat it like a normal approach, and you're still looking over here. It looks really weird, okay, but this is how you do it. Power setting, maybe a little more power in the crosswind, that's all. You come down just like this. So once you get over the runway, you get into flare mode, just like we did. So we'll slowly go power idle. But however, right about here, this is where it gets different. Same idea, same concept, but now, if you look at the runway, in the middle of the runway is here, between these runway width markings. runway goes here, and the plane is pointed left, as well as you could look it over here. So that's not good, obviously, right? We have to account for crosswind correction. Now, the crosswind today is coming from our left side. It's coming from over here, from the west, from New York City. So in the flare, we have to apply opposite rudder. We have to apply right rudder. And the way I know that is just common sense. Look at the nose. The nose is pointed left. The runway centerline stripes are here. They're to the right. So we have to apply right rudder, kicking a little bit of right rudder here, to straighten the plane out. Now, in real life, if you do that and you don't touch the ailerons, the plane is going to drift over to the right. So the ailerons, you have to apply a little bit of left aileron while flaring and some right rudder, kind of like this motion for a left crosswind, to get the back left wheel to hit first, then the right wheel, then the nose wheel. Now, it's extra imperative in a crosswind, when you land, do not let go of that yoke, as it is for any landing, or else the wind will totally knock you off, right? When you land, the airplane is still flying. Keep that same input you had in when you were flaring on the whole rollout on the runway. So, I'm going to go ahead and show you what this looks like. I'll try my best. It's always hard to land with the crosswind on this thing. Coming down in, slowly goes idle. Right rudder, left aileron. Get it over the runway. Now, let me pause it here. This is a little too much right rudder, but see how the plane is a little bit more straight now? And I have left aileron, and I'll unfreeze it here. And there we go. Hold that yoke off and maintain the center line. So obviously a little trickier in the sim, but I hope that drills the point in, right? Aileron into the wind, then opposite rudder. Basically once you pass over the runway numbers, once you flare, and all that. So we'll put the flaps up, and that goes right there. And we'll go ahead and stop this plane here. Alright, so that is a lesson on landing. So hope you enjoyed, and any questions, let me know.